All set.
Okay, stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The village of New Paltz humbly acknowledges that we are on the traditional lands of the Munsee-Sobis and Lenape people. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 forced the people to relocate to inhospitable territory far from the Bountiful Valley mountains we inhabit today. The village further acknowledges that much of the physical structure of our village and town was built by enslaved Africans who labored as the property of their owners until 1827 on this very land. We acknowledge and honor the contributions, resilience, and accomplishments of the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color who've overcome historic injustice to inform our past and inspire our future. The village of New Paltz encourages everyone to learn more about the contributions and sacrifices made by the Indigenous people and enslaved Africans by visiting the sites that we include on our agendas and minutes. And if you have any resources you believe that should be included here, please contact us. Thank you.
I want to make a couple amendments to our agendas. So nothing to update on the consent agenda. So I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the business agenda tonight, we're going to talk about the declaration of a water emergency because the DEP is going to do a shutdown the first half of December. And we have a request from community improvement team regarding holiday decorations. And then we have a discussion about 151 North Chestnut Street, the proposed apartment complex. I'd like to adopt this business agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And you want to jump into announcements?
Sure.
I'll start with my announcement first. So, each year during Hanukkah, we host a menorah that's sited right outside the Village Hall property here. And that'll be there for the month of December. And then I just wanted to share publicly that there's going to be a community menorah lighting on Thursday, the 18th at 6 p.m. We encourage everyone to come by. Our friends at the property on South Oakwood, they always host that event and bring tons of donuts. So
See you there.
it's a fan favorite. You want to do additional announcements?
Yeah, I have a few more. So this was one of the things that we just approved in our consent agenda, but I promised the organizers I would share it out. A group of amazing people are bringing in free food shares every Tuesday from 2:30 to 6 at the old firehouse room. And so come on through. The food's been pretty
They're
good.
gonna be in the bay, that's how we're gonna use.
The old firehouse
Yeah.
bay, yeah, space that's over to my left, of where we are. Which is, yeah, so every Tuesday, just mark your calendars. It's not food, not bombs, but in my head, it's food, not bombs, so, I'll see everyone there next Tuesday. And then just wanted to remind everyone that Bolster Corp has that map of food resources. It's at, like, the link in my bio, and I can make sure to share it with you, Mike, and everyone else, so we can link it in the minutes. And then I wanted to just make sure to shout out, you know, because it is Trans Awareness Week and tomorrow is Trans Day of Remembrance. The New Paltz Pride Coalition has a really long list of resources on the resources page and has some good community events coming up. There's a Queers Giving at Little Loaf Bakery happening tomorrow. It's free, but last I checked, all the spots were taken already. Like, it filled up fast, just demonstrating how much our, you know, LGBTQIA plus community needs community at this time. But never fear, there's more events coming up. Like a free holiday cookie event that's family friendly happening at the Dorsey on Saturday, December 6th. So you know, don't lose hope. We love you, and there's lots of resources and opportunities for our community to get together.
I'll just remind everybody that if you're in a position to help your neighbors, Family of New Paltz is a great way to do that. You can, donate money, non-perishable foods, especially right now. I know everybody listens to the food fridge and we're trying to make other options available as ours, just announced one, you know. Family's a wonderful resource and has been helping, our neighbors in need of more food for a long time. So if you can give them some non-perishable food or, self-care items like toothbrushes and toothpaste and sanitary napkins and things like that, it's always greatly appreciated. And if you have extra time, you can always call them up and see if they need help.
Tim, would you just allow me to make a quick announcement so that,
Yeah,
the
come up though, because I don't trust,
okay.
Have a nice day.
Yeah,
anyone
when I
who's
was
too far away.
listening, yeah, when I was listening to the video.
Listening to these YouTubes, the audio is terrible.
Yeah, the planning board will be in search of a new member as of January. And also, currently we have no alternate members, so we have 2 openings for alternates. The zoning board of appeals will have a member opening as of January and, we'll have 1 alternate opening. Along with all the other volunteer boards that I don't know off the top of my head who's, I think almost every board has openings.
Yeah.
But in particular, the planning and zoning board, can't operate without a quorum. We will have a quorum, but we'll be getting closer and closer each meeting if somebody's absent, if we will. So if anybody is interested, please reach out to me. Planning zoning at villageofnewpaltz.gov. And anyone who's interested, reach out to me and I can walk you through what's needed, what the commitment is, and hopefully some people will be interested.
Okay, Mike, stay there. So I'm gonna do the business agenda a little bit out of order because I asked Randall to join us. Randall, you want to come to the table? And Mike, you can stay.
Okay.
So we have an agenda item. We were just thinking to provide our board and the community with an update on the proposed apartment complex at 151 North Chestnut. So Randall is here wearing his IDA hat. Sorta, and his, right, your town council person hat and resident hat, he's got a few hats. Mike and I were also at the IDA meeting this morning, we each made a public comment. So I just figured, why don't we, all chat together publicly if any of our board members have questions, but I figured I would, and then we have a couple of business items related to this proposed project on this agenda, but I figured I would at least give you the floor to kind of cue us in on the latest and greatest regarding that project.
Well, I can, I basically, at our meeting today, we received, another, cost benefit analysis study. I have not poured through that fully yet, to comparison to the one that, the agency did, as part of its process. So the applicant, I believe, paid for this cost benefit analysis study, that was managed by the agency. So
But you guys picked the consultant,
Correct.
MRB, right?
we did that.
They're a big
with the
consulting
staff.
firm in this, I mean, that's generally like how it works on any
Yeah.
planning board. It's like the applicant pays, but
The agency manages, tells them
like
what
they
want
can't
done.
pick their brother to do the.
Correct. Correct.
The reviews.
So, that document was part of the packet that we received this morning. And you should be able to see that on the webpage. So, I saw it earlier. I got it Friday. I haven't had a chance to paw through it with a fine tooth comb. So at this point, the agency is looking at that. I believe we're gonna have them come back in and we'll have a conversation with them about that new cost benefit analysis. And we'll be able to ask them some additional questions. Of course, there's public comment if people are willing or able to come up for that, they can do that. And then I believe the agency will either make a decision in December or January. It depends on the outcome of the conversation at our next meeting. It's the third Wednesday of every month. So depending on the outcome of that meeting, we may have additional questions for them. I do know that the agency is reviewing and has reviewed all the comments. I didn't know somebody showed up with a pitchfork and mask at the public hearing. Is that true? Rather amusing. So that's where the agency is at this point with respect to that application.
Okay, so Mike, so the materials, I guess there's like an updated report from the applicant.
There's an update cover letter associated with that
Right,
study.
along with the study.
The applicant, yes,
Yeah.
good. The applicant also submitted responses to comment and other questions that were there that sort of mirrored cost benefit analysis.
Right, so
Questions.
So I made a public comment and like Mike pointed out to me how in the cover letter, the applicant was defending their need for a tax abatement because the change to our affordable housing law. And I believe the language that they used, they said that this would be the first project that had a new requirement. And they described it as the number of units that needed to be affordable would have doubled, which is not correct. It went from 10% to 15%. So it's an increase, but it's not a 100% increase.
If they wanted to increase double, they could, but yeah.
Right.
It went from 13 to 20. With the 10%, it would have been 13 units. With the 15%, it's 20 units. So it's a 7-unit increase.
And then the other point that I was trying to highlight in my public comment this morning after my gaffe, where I was in my head trying to use the number 1,000, and for whatever reason, I kept saying 1 million, because the fire department historically has stayed below 1,000 calls per year. A couple of times during the superstorms, they got above 1,000 calls in a year. But from what I understand, that's considered the tipping point for a fire department that's 100% volunteer, where they might have to go to some sort of paid version once they go above 1,000 calls per year. So my public comment was basically focused on, and I know that Randall's been very focused on emergency services generally, and I was focusing on the fact that we have a 100% volunteer fire department. And the way I describe volunteer fire department members is you can ask them to do anything and then they will, but that does not mean that we should ask them to do anything. So should they be expected to continue to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and respond to properties that are not paying their full tax expense? I think that's a giant ask to expect from volunteer firefighters. So that was kind of the discussion that I was trying to highlight. And then I think what's super unique about New Paltz is like, you could have like another town that received a tax abatement, and generally a fire district would be separate from the tax abatement calculations. But what's unique about the village of New Paltz is our fire expenses are baked into our general fund. So that's why, it's truly, there's no, you are taking a haircut as far as fire department expenses because of how we, expect taxpayers to pay for paramedic services. And then Mike made a public comment. Do you want to just like briefly highlight?
Yeah, just to build off what Tim said, most of the communities, and I can't say with 100% certainty if we're the only one, New Paltz is the only one, but most communities, the fire department is set up in a fire district, which is a separate taxing authority. It's a special district. And special districts are, pilots don't apply to special districts. So even if a project gets a pilot, they're still obligated to pay their fire tax to the local fire district.
Much like the water.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
don't,
property tax.
yeah, I don't wanna say with 100% certainty, but I believe every special district.
Yeah, I think like a
is-
library district would fall
Yeah,
under that.
yeah.
I mean, I always think of like water and sewer is different, cause that's just based on metered
Yeah.
consumption, so it's not based on property taxes.
Yeah.
But the uniqueness of New Paltz is because it's a function of the village government that is funded through the A fund. That is very different than a community where it's funded through its own special district, and I think that's important to remember. Another comment that was sort of brought up is, why is this, project different than any of the other projects that have been proposed in New Paltz? And that's where I spoke, and it's the sheer volume and the amount that's being asked for. It's over $5 million in property tax, it's over $1 million in sales tax. Now admittedly, the majority of the sales tax impact is gonna be on the county and the city of Kingston.
Yeah.
But still, there is an impact, and the mortgage tax, which is an impact to the community. So I pointed out that the residents of New Paltz are gonna bear the brunt of this impact in paying for this over that 15 years, which amounts to, and I ballparked it at, say, $7 million over 15 years, which is, almost over 400 and almost $500,000 a year, that the residents are now going, because the amount to be collected in taxes isn't gonna go down. It's gonna, we've been good in that it's remained constant for 10 years, but it's still gonna be, that cost is gonna be associated to all the other residents in the community. And I advocated strongly, and I don't know enough about IDA law to know if this is possible, but I asked for the IDA that if they felt an incentive was warranted, to try to find a middle ground. The applicant is asking for a certain amount. I don't know if the IDA and, I certainly, I'm not an attorney and I don't know these things. It's not something I'm well versed on. But if the board can come back with essentially a counter proposal and say, well, we're not gonna give you this, but we'll allow this. It's, in some ways, it's acknowledging that the project is bringing housing, it's bringing potential jobs into the community. It is bringing some things into the community, but it's the weighing of the cost versus what it's bringing. But, I was basically saying, does it have to be a yes or no answer? Can it be a middle ground, answer? So,
Well, I think
I don't know that answer,
I
but
think they have a lot of defending to support a middle ground answer.
Agreed.
It's like,
we
we have a methodology for how governmental and emergency services are paid for, and it's just a calculation, it's your assessed value times the tax rate, and that's your bill.
yeah,
No,
understood. But
I
I'm
mean,
just saying, for the full ask of the $6 to $7 million.
Well, there are, or there have been opportunities. I mean, when I chaired the agency, somebody would come in and say, I want a 15-year pilot or something, and I would, we'd be like, no, we'll give you 10.
right,
We're not gonna give you 15 for this. So there's leeway
Okay.
there. But, I personally have, as chair, I was adamantly opposed to the agency doing housing for the very reasons
Yep.
that we sit here now, and I was
Yeah.
Run out of
100%
Dodge.
affordable.
because, I was standing in the way of another project. And it wasn't, a dislike for housing, but in my view, it is not the purview of the agency. The agency is industrial development. I'll give you an example. I mean, up in, I believe it's, Liverpool or, Syracuse, somewhere there, Micron Technology or whatever is about to, there's federal funds, there's IDA, but we're talking decent paying jobs. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what the agency is designed to do, and we're sort of in this situation where we are in a landlocked community. We have very little free space to do things, so we need to be strategic.
Yes.
And we can't, I can't help but think about, the line in, the movie The Birdcage. And Gene Hackman says to his daughter, who's gonna marry, the son of a gay couple, and he says, honey, I know you wanna get married, but how many lives do you need to destroy to do it? That is how I think about housing in the IDA. I know we need affordable housing, but how many taxpayers need to be destroyed in order for us to do that? So, it goes without saying that I'm a strong advocate for the IDA, because I think there are times when we do things that are wonderful. Woodland Pond is an example. Viking industry here in New Paltz is an example. We did the Gardner Library. We've done, I believe, the spa at Mohonk Mountain House. So those things attract people to the community who spend money that helps keep people employed. I'd have no objection if Mohonk said, you know what? We've got old dorms here that our employees live in, that we rent to them. They're not open market housing, but it's for our employees. To me, that's workforce housing. The notion that we label anybody who gets up and goes to work as, workforce and they need housing, to me is bunk. And so this casual throwing around of labels, I mean, affordable housing isn't really affordable housing if the people who really can't afford housing can't get in it. So, the idea of building these massive units with 10 to 15 units in them that are affordable and people are scrambling to get into them, you're not solving a problem. You're not solving a problem, and you're creating a bigger problem, because with the very small amount of land that we have in this community that is buildable, you're putting up these monstrosities that is not tackling the real issue. And the real issue is finding homes and housing for people who are low to moderate income, who can't afford to live in the community, or keeping people who are seniors who are being taxed out of their homes, which is a state problem, because that's why you don't really have the kinds of businesses that come to New York, because they're taxed to death. So the notion that, we solve a problem by building housing and getting 10 units out of 126 is preposterous to me.
Yeah.
It saddens me that our planning board or your planning board approved it.
They weren't talking about a pilot when.
I totally understand that. I totally understand that. So we're all in between a rock and a hard place at this point.
Well, I think the thing you brought up, which is also interesting too, is like we are like essentially in this like landlocked area, and that we have a finite amount of land to build anything. Like, you can compare that to even the article in today's Times Union. Like the city of Albany is basically walking back their affordable housing law, because what they're finding is that the housing is not being built in Albany because of the but for this tax abatement concept. And like, if you're in the capital district, you don't have to build in the city of Albany. You can go to Troy, you can go, north of the city, you can go to Schenectady. You have other comparable options. And like here, there really aren't, it's like the reason that people are in New Paltz is because of proximity to the university, and because of, this smaller, it's not, if you're not in New Paltz, then you're doing something very different, like in the capital district. There's just
Or
more
Allen, I
opportunity.
mean, you know, you could put it in Allenville, you could put it in Highland, I mean, you know, ultimately. But there are
But they
other,
want to be here, and that's why they are here, and that's why the other developers are willing to uphold and follow through on the affordable housing law without seeking a tax abatement.
well, hopefully those that are not getting a pilot don't turn co-op or condo.
But even if they turn co-op or condo, they're still subject to an affordable housing law.
Well,
The units still have to be affordable.
They may be, but they could be Airbnbs, I mean, somebody.
No.
Nobody
not
could.
under-
I can't hear.
It's not gonna happen.
We also have a short-term
Yeah, it's
rental
not gonna
law.
happen.
It's not gonna happen
Okay.
based on the laws of the village.
Okay,
Yeah, like that's one of the cool things is like we've solved a lot of those what ifs. And then this what if that's happening right now is like, it's been killing me. Cause you said it really well, Randall. It's like, I've been having such a hard time wrapping my head around since when, like, in the state of New York, do we just start throwing ID usage around for housing, for market rate housing?
well,
know?
I can tell you, and you were there when I was chair. You know, and I got beat up for it. But
You got thrown out the door.
there was a ban on affordable, on housing.
Mhm.
And the only housing that the agency, when I chaired it, could and was allowed to do was senior housing with continuing care, which is a Woodland Pond.
Mhm.
If a business wanted to build housing for their employees, they could do it. Those were the two conditions
Mhm.
that I had in place, and they stood there until I left. And then,
If we were
They
talking about
got
100%
rid of it.
affordable housing,
It's totally different.
It would be a completely different conversation.
But then the
As we
local
had
government has
the-
to negotiate that.
Right, but as we did.
They wouldn't go to the IDA, they wouldn't pay IDA fees to do that.
and you know, the other argument that I had as chair was, you know, there are agencies within the state that provide assistance for doing housing for people. And my guess is that developers don't want to go through that process because they're watched very, 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 very carefully. And so why not bring it to the IDA? Because this isn't what we do.
Right.
The other thing, in the past, you know, I witnessed when your board was going through the projects when I was supervisor in Rochester, is that the job creation longevity was much more looked at, because any project is gonna create job creation during construction period. It doesn't matter.
Well, I even take issue with that.
Obviously, the size of the project is gonna, you know, increase the numbers and the longevity, but once that's done in 18 months, 2 years, whatever that time frame is, you know, and the job creation is less than you can count on one hand. So it's sort of counterproductive, counterintuitive, not productive, but counterintuitive to the purpose of the IDA, which I always read and was about creating jobs, creating economy, and I
Well,
don't feel like
it's,
this is doing that.
you know, as a person who has studied economic development, I have a master's in economic development. I've worked in economic development in the city of Washington before, because I'm not a native New Yorker. If you've ever been to the Adams Morgan area of Washington DC, that has my fingerprints all over it. This is not the way to solve a housing problem. It is not a way to build community. It is not a way to, you know, one of my, and I didn't run it during the campaign, but I did have a video on housing. And I said, what we are essentially doing is we're playing Monopoly. And you have people who've got all the money from the bank plopping up the hotels and houses all over the place. And then they land on utilities and waterworks, and bill comes due. And what we're missing here is we put all this stuff on top of the ground, but we're not focusing on the infrastructure that is necessary and is needed for a place like this to grow into something other than a tourist destination. A place where people can live and work and not be taxed out of their homes. A place where seniors can raise their families, have them go off and be somewhere nearby and not have to move to Florida or whatever because the taxes are eating them alive. And so for me, my challenge to you as the incoming supervisor is to think about ways in which we develop a community that is based on sound and logical infrastructure growth and development that includes housing and job creation for people so that we capture people and keep them here in the community to help us build a community. I mean, the important thing that I think about always when I think about economic development is making sure that businesses that are in the community are part of the community, are active in the community. Because that to me means that they are vested in the place that they do business and that they just don't see us as the speed bump they go over to collect their money to go to the bank in Westchester or New York City or wherever the devil they live. If we're going to give you tax breaks for things, then you need to invest in our community. And that investment can be sponsoring Little League Baseball. That investment could be, sponsoring whatever it is, but all of that needs to be tied into whatever kind of development that we do. And you can't expect an agency like the IDA to have that in the forefront of their minds. I mean, I totally think this differently than many of the people who sit around that table because of my background and training. And sometimes the arguments that are made are just so illogical to me that I am stupefied. But, I'm one person and it is what it is.
Well, thanks for the update and, the open line of communication. We'll continue to talk about this and it'll be interesting to see what the IDA conversation is like next month,
So
next
it's
December.
December 17th.
Yeah, third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday.
So just to continue with this topic, so, the next steps for this project with or without a tax abatement is they have to go back before the village planning board to perform a site plan review. Part of that process.
No, they don't have to go back in front of the board. They just have to, so with the decision, there were conditions that had to be met prior to the signature on the site plan. They don't have to
So
go
the
back
site
to the
plan
board.
review has already occurred.
Site plan review has occurred.
Okay,
There's a
I'm
list
sorry.
of conditions that I am empowered to review
Right.
and say they've been completed or not completed. Once those conditions are completed, I present the site plan to the chair to sign off on it. There's other conditions that have to be completed prior to a building permit. So, there's a section in our approvals called special conditions. They don't go back to
I
the
see.
planning board
So
to
it's a
certify.
review, but it's not in front of the
Right.
planning board.
They have, yeah, I just want to be clear, they have their approval.
Yeah.
But in order to get signatures on the plans, they had to do, go to the health department, go to the DOT, go and finish securing the other permits they needed.
Right,
So they're- yeah.
right, and they came to you today and asked for a permit regarding like grading at the site, right?
Well, it was submitted a couple months ago.
But they followed up with.
Yeah, they followed up today.
And part of that includes, and we had discussed this as a board previously too, and that they want to be able to connect to the rail trail. And what we've done with all other properties, whether it's Zero Place or the hotel or the Baxter properties is, we just use the easement that we created for Zero Place. So, that's already been tested and reviewed by attorneys. And the idea would be to, use that same agreement, which also needs sign off from the Walkville Valley Land Trust. And there's, it's in our agenda here. There's a communication with them where they had spoken with the developer. So we don't want to be in a situation where, because we're discussing this tax abatement, that the developer could accuse us of creating any roadblocks.
Right.
So that's why we have
These are all normal process things that happen on every application. In this particular case, there's two agreements that the mayor needs to sign on behalf of the village that, I presented the agreements to the village attorney, the planning board attorney have reviewed them and okayed the language. They're boilerplate, very comparable to the other projects. So they require the mayor to sign, but in order for the mayor to sign, he needs the board approval to say, yes, he can sign.
And these are not agreements that, like, let's say this project does not happen, then these agreements just evaporate.
They
don't-
extinguish, yeah, it's an easement to access the rail trail from their property. Any property that would have an access to the rail trail would need to have this agreement. It's to protect liability, to say how it's gonna be constructed. The second was at the request of this board, actually, is there's gonna be a new pump station
For sewer.
for sewage in that area because of the three projects. Each project is paying 1/3 of the cost. The other two have already signed and paid. This is the third project. So by signing this check, we'll actually get a check from the developer to pay the other third of the cost. That when the DPW either does the work or has the work done, it's funded 100% from those projects, not from taxpayers.
And just one other thing that you mentioned at the meeting today, I don't know whether it was you or Tim, but one of you mentioned, a CBA. Whether or not the agency could work out the CBA. That the agency cannot do, it is not the responsibility of the agency, and we do not police community benefit agreements. They are hammered out between an applicant during the planning board process. Generally, if you know, they're gonna go for a pilot, but since you didn't know, you didn't. So at this point, trying to create one and do one is probably like negotiating for new mats in your new car after you've signed the financial papers and driven the car off the lot.
Yep.
The horse has left the barn.
Oh.
So, it's a non-starter for the agency. I know that there's a CBA with Woodland Pond. That when we go through making sure that they're creating the jobs that they're doing, if they choose not to pay you, not our problem. The agency does not touch it. We do not enforce it, and nothing to do with us. So,
But also to add to that, there's nothing, I know the IDA is not involved in it, but there's nothing to say that even if the IDA awards the pilot, that couldn't be subsequently discussed and worked out, right?
Well, that would be
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, that's
that would
between
be
the village
and
and the town
and the
or
developer.
whoever, yeah.
But
All the taxing authorities, including
Yeah.
the school districts
Yeah.
who shouldn't be. And Donna's tried to nudge them a couple
Yeah.
times.
But
They
it-
should
it
be
could just
interested in
be-
this conversation too.
It could also be just one taxing authority too. I mean, you would prefer that it would be all of them, but it could just be one, so.
Well,
it
we historically aren't negotiating unilaterally, we're including all the taxing
Yeah,
authorities.
no, understood.
But I also think, playing devil's advocate, I mean, at what point would I need to sit down with you all to talk about a community benefit agreement after I've got my pilot? I don't need you.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't
agreed.
Yeah.
need you, and, hello, you're getting recreation fees, so whatever you do with those, that's what you've gotten for me, so why would I?
Because every other housing project pays their taxes and recreation fees.
Correct, but that's. That's.
It's a question of equity, it's.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I say there should be no housing by the agency.
Here, here.
That's.
I second your motion.
That's just me, but that's why they ran me on.
Oh, well, thanks for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Catching up with us.
Randall, one quick question for you.
Yes.
Does the IDA have a complete comprehensive resource for those who've filed some sort of comment?
The agency, I mean, I think Hillary, who is the executive
Right.
director, she probably collects all of those comments, and I think, at the meeting after, probably the October meeting, because I was in Europe for that meeting. No, maybe it was.
They bumped the discussion on October 19th on this project, is that correct?
Right, there was no conversation.
There's no conversation, but the comments that were received and the comments that were heard at the September 5th.
Yeah, I was at the September 5th
So was
meeting. There was no, yeah, you were there. You made.
So those comments,
Those comments are all on the record.
they're all on the
available.
record,
I'll
and then
reach out to them.
there were people who probably wrote in. I think there were some written comments that came in later
That's
that are
correct.
always that are included in the document. So I mean, those are foilable, or they're probably online.
Right, so did you receive those comments for today's meeting?
I believe those were received at the October meeting. No. September meeting. I think we received those on the September.
So
at the
public comment
September
is
meeting, because it was a
closed.
transcript,
I
yeah,
The
realize that.
public hearing that occurred in
Yeah.
this room on September 5th.
yeah.
Any public comment? Do you-
Yeah,
Including emails.
Including emails?
Yeah, once and I don't know this for a fact, but I would believe that once the public hearing is closed.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody comes to the meeting, like Tim and I did
That's-
today, and make a public comment.
Right.
It's on the record as public comment at that meeting, it's not on the record as part of, so. My guess is that once the public, because I know from the planning board, once the public hearing is closed, unless the board holds it open for written comment.
Right.
It's closed.
Right.
So if it was closed on that day, but I will tell you, they had transcribed every word that's said, and that is part of the record.
But
of all that occurred at the.
what we submitted.
Right,
Was.
So there is the September 5th public hearing here, but then the period to submit public comment was beyond the 5th. Like it was into the next week, and whatever we submitted, and I think I submitted something else. Hillary told me that all got in.
They might also be included just as general there's nothing to stop written communications from being sent. You know, there's not like one folder that every public comment that's been made about a project I'm guessing, is sitting
Yeah.
in. But if any written comments that are received, because I know in their meeting agenda, there's communications in there that have been received from outside sources that are included as communications.
Yeah.
So I think the short answer to your question is, yes, they're in the packets and they're provided to the members. but they're not all combined as one
Yeah.
document.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's just the way it works.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
all right, let's,
Yeah,
I was just gonna say one suggestion that I made in a discussion at the meeting today was, it may be in the agency's interest when an applicant is petitioning for a pilot in a community like ours, a village that's part of the town, that our participation is a joint planning board meeting so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. Because ultimately, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but it's almost as if I cater a party and invite everybody from New Paltz, and then I send all of you a bill and you don't have anything to say about it. And so, in the spirit of having an open dialogue and open communication and things that impact all taxpayers, because this pilot will impact all taxpayers, not just the village. It would be in our interest to make sure that if a project is coming into the village that potentially seeks to have a pilot,
yeah,
that the town planning board be part of that process.
a consolidated New Paltz gets you there, like this whole charade that we've done for, for over 100 years now, that's what this is. And it's all-
Yeah, I do want to say, I do feel the need to defend the village planning board a little bit, because this project came in. It started before I was here, but they came back full force while I was here. And when we were reviewing the part one EAF, we specifically asked, are there any funding agencies that you're going to be seeking from? They need to be included in the seeker. And I don't remember if we were told yes or no, but none were indicated. There was zero indication of a pilot ever.
Yeah, they were.
So I guess my little bit of pushback is every application that comes to New Paltz Village Planning Board could potentially ask for a pilot down the road, but so we would have to include the town in every single application process.
And that
And,
too is part of, that's not just on
right, but
the
when,
village and the town, it is also a consideration for the agency.
right,
Because I think,
but when the applicant fills out their part one, they are signing it that the information is correct, and things like what agencies are you going to apply, we have no basis to challenge them, if are they going to or not going to.
Well, what has our attorney said about, is that a reason to reopen seeker?
You can't. Once,
Why?
so she has said that once seeker is completed and a decision is made by the board to grant an approval, you cannot reopen seeker.
Even if it was based on
Now, the.
incomplete information?
But see, what happens is the IDA, because they were not involved in the seeker, each agency is required to at least be given the opportunity to participate in seeker. Anybody that we included in the ability, they either did participate or they said, we have no comments, you be lead agency. The IDA wasn't asked. So they now, before they can adopt a pilot, this is my opinion, but I believe it's probably truth. They now have to do their own seeker. Now, the IDA has two choices. They can adopt the seeker that we did, or they can conduct their own seeker review. But in fairness to them, their only concerns are about the items that are financial and involve them,
Sure, but just read
Yeah.
the mission statement of the
Yeah.
IDA and the financial
Right.
piece
But,
speaks generally about how it impacts the community
Right.
broadly.
right, but
So-
seeker is, you can't do it under zoning law. You cannot do it under zoning. It can only be reviewed under seeker. Seeker is,
Right, and if the IDA has to perform a seeker, a
Right.
seeker is not just environmental, or the
Understood.
environment includes financial impact.
understood.
So
So,
they can do it,
Right.
they can ask these questions.
right, so but my point is.
Provided we
that-
haven't, I believe we may have adopted your seeker.
Do we know that for sure?
I don't know the answer to that, but they have that ability to adopt any agency. You know, if another agency not funding, say suddenly it was determined that they needed a.
Well, I'm just gonna email Hillary and ask
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's how it's set up,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
All right, we
So,
exhausted this tonight.
yeah.
Randall, thanks for coming by on short notice.
Yeah.
Good seeing you.
Yeah,
Have some sway over your fellow.
All right, so regarding this project, I'm moving that we authorize the mayor to sign the rail trail access agreement, subject to confirmation of the agreement by the Walker Valley Land Trust. All in favor? And then,
And I don't know if anybody else had public comment, you kind of skipped over it.
Well, we're finishing up.
Yeah,
public comment on,
no, just.
let me finish this, then I'll be back.
Yeah,
you need to say.
No,
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the developers agreement that relates to 1/3 the cost of a new sewer pump station not to exceed $137,833 between Westview Development and the Village of New Paltz. All in favor? And I think you're right, Mike. I don't know that we ever even had
Yeah. I
a
just want to
public
be sure you didn't
comment.
skip over.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Anyone here want to make a public comment? Oh, yeah,
Just
we're
want,
not doing online public comments.
nobody online.
Okay, and then we have a public hearing that's open, regarding the draft law for the village manager position. I'm gonna propose that we just keep it open. We circulated, some questions, for our attorney based on some of the feedback that we got from Michael Zeeler at our meeting, a couple weeks ago. So I think we have, clear direction on where we should head with that. So my anticipation is that we can put this draft law on the agenda for adoption at our first meeting in December.
So we'll keep it open until then.
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool.
And then let me just do this, declaration of water emergency and a call for conversion during the New York City DEP shutdown of the Catskill Aqueduct. So the Catskill Aqueduct is doing some work for 16 days in December from the 1st to the 16th. So in our code, we have the ability to ask for people to be careful with their water consumption, and only use water for regular household or business consumption until such a time that the Board of Trustees shall declare that the emergency is terminated. I move that we adopt enforcement of this water emergency starting on December 1st and then terminated on December 16th. And then I've also shared it with the SUNY Pulse officials. So Alex seconded it. All in favor? And then the community improvement team, they're working on getting some decorations at the bridge landing by the Walk Hill River, as well as they're working with the New Paltz School District. So they were looking for up to $1,000 for holiday directions. And this would augment the snowflakes that we anticipate hanging up on our 13 outlets on the different utility poles along Main Street. So I move that we authorize spending up to $1,000 on these holiday decorations.
Second.
All in favor?
Question on that. Just, have they been informed? I saw a note from Heather, I believe, about them looking for approval from the county.
Yeah, they're working with the county because the county technically is
Right.
in charge of the landing. Yeah.
Right.
We're just green lighting that
Expensive.
that we're using local village budget to pay for the features that will be on the middle school property and the features that will be on the landing property. And then, they seem like stuff that can all be reused.
Great.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So did we just vote in favor of that?
Yes.
All in favor? Okay. And then, so I'm gonna hand it over to Alex. We have a resolution regarding Trans Day of Remembrance.
All right. All right, so here's our resolution of the village board memorializing the designation of December 2025 as Transgender Day of Remembrance and the month of November as Transgender Awareness Month. Whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance was founded by transgender advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith as a vigil to honor her memory of Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. The vigil commemorated all the transgender people lost to violence that year and began an important memorial that has become the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance. And whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance is an annual observance on November 20th that honors the memory of the transgender and gender nonconforming or gender diverse TGNC, people whose lives were lost in acts of hate, acts of anti-transgender or anti-gender nonconforming violence that year. And whereas according to data compiled from the Trans Lives Matter website, the Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, the media coverage linked throughout the report shared by all three of these resources, there were at least 361 reported violent deaths of TGNC people globally in the past year, specifically between October 1st, 2024 and September 30th, 2025. Whereas at least 65 of those reported violent deaths of trans and gender diverse folks in the past year were in the United States alone. At least 36 of the total violent deaths of TGNC people in the US this past year were murders. And whereas at least 66 trans and gender nonconforming individuals died by suicide in the same time frame, 29 of whom were in the US. And whereas it's important to say their names are Tiara Love Torrey Jackson, Scarlett, Blaze Alexander Ball Mason, Blake Stern, Robin James Post, Cassie Ray or Kay Holmes, Onyx Cornish, Aurora Pellegrina, also known as Alexa and Luna, Blair A. Sawyer, Rosa Machucha, Dream Johnson, Artie Cassidy Beowulf Gibson, Nathaniel Pabone Cruz or Nata, Kimora Woods, Kia Lee Tabitha Roberts, Cam or Gabrielle Nagayan, Lily Dawn Harkins, Christina Hayes, JJ Godby, Emma Slavic, Laura Schuyler, Hope Leica Youngblood, Jax Grattan, Tessa June, Jonathan Joss, Charlotte Fosgate, Carmen Wells, Shiperius Dupree, Kelsey Alem, Nora Horwitz, Caitlin Renetta Benoit, Charlene Cook, Jordan J. Day May, Linda Becerra Moran, Henri Dior, Irviana Johnson, Sam Nordquist, Tahiri Broom, Aubrey Dameron, Elisa Ray Shoup, Parker Savarese, Johnny Adamau, River Trevino, Mika Shabazz, Cam Thompson, Aziza Barnes, or also known as V, Roy Mora, Rylesa Wright, Kanisha Chantel, also known as Coco, Kyla Jane Walker, Sid or Sydney Lee Phillips, Spencer James Castle, Serenity Birdsong, Leah Joe, Jay Flores, Alex or Allison Ketchum, San Coleman, Rick Alistair Newman, Phoenix Cassetta, Raven Syed, Megan Jordan Credilli, Jill Heathers Bouvier, and Honey Walker. Whereas we say at least this many transgender and gender nonconforming people die victims of anti-trans hate because too often these deaths go unreported and misreported. And whereas 27 of these trans and gender nonconforming individuals were living in so-called blue states at the time of their death, 6 being right here in New York, demonstrating that bigotry, hatred, and violence knows no boundaries. Whereas transgender people have a rate of depression nearly 4 times that of the general population, 40% of transgender people have attempted suicide in their lifetime, 9 times the rate of the general population. And whereas transgender Americans face barriers to healthcare, such as lack of health insurance, stigma and discrimination, higher rates of unemployment, and in an increasingly higher number of states, legal barriers to accessing medical care. And whereas transgender people disproportionately suffer from higher rates of homelessness, with reports suggesting as many as 1/3 of transgender women and 1/2 of trans and gender nonconforming women who are Black, Middle Eastern, multiracial, or undocumented have ever experienced homelessness. And whereas according to the New York State Legislature's 2025 Trans Day of Remembrance Resolution, 1 in 5 transgender people in the United States have been denied housing and 11% have been evicted for their gender identity. Furthermore, 1 in 12 transgender people report being kicked out of their family homes, and 1 in 5 transgender people have been homeless at some point in their lives. And whereas a 2020 study conducted by the Center for American Progress shows that transgender people continue to face discrimination and marginalization in society in every way. Specifically, data from this report suggests it's dangerous to just be transgender, gender nonconforming in public today in the United States. 62% of transgender people experience discrimination in the last year. More than 25% of transgender people say they have endured significant psychological harm due to such discrimination. 50% of transgender people have experienced discrimination in public places. 2/3 of transgender people change the way they dress and their mannerisms in order to avoid discrimination. And whereas transgender violence and bigotry harm our communities, with statistics showing that 1 in 2 transgender and gender non-binary individuals have encountered verbal, physical, emotional, and or digital violence. And whereas Black transgender women are the most targeted group to experience violence in the United States. In fact, according to a report from this year from Advocates for Trans Equality of the recorded violent deaths this year, 63% were Black trans women, a devastating reminder of the disproportionate violence that continues to impact Black trans communities. And whereas the continued introduction of anti-transgender legislation continues to fuel violence against transgender Americans, and whereas efforts to restrict access to gender-affirming healthcare has stripped many transgender people of access to medically necessary care, it's led to a spike in poor mental health and suicidality among transgender youth and adults, increasing bullying and assault in schools, and it's left parents and their children afraid that their children may be removed from their homes because they support their transgender child. Therefore, be it resolved that the Village of New Paltz on this date, which is November 19th, 2025, joins communities around the world in a moment of remembrance and of transgender and gender nonconforming lives lost to violence in the past year. Be it further resolved that we urge our representatives on the county, state, and federal levels to act to protect and preserve the lives of all transgender and gender nonconforming people through inclusive legislation and policies that treat everyone with dignity and respect. Be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz wishes to help raise the visibility of transgender people and illuminate the issues the trans community faces by reaffirming our declaration of November as Transgender Awareness Month. And be it further resolved, we'll send this up the chain to every other elected. So motion to pass this resolution. All in favor? Oh.
Just one thing, thank you so much. It's really great writing, and thanks once again for all your hard work on this. There was one aspect I wanted to include, but didn't get a chance to, perhaps when it comes to households. And this comes from Make the Road New York, that organization. And I was struck by this, that trans people also reported much lower household incomes than the population as a whole, with many living in dire poverty. In New York State, 19% of respondents had a household income of $10,000 or less. I mean, that's just compared to 4% of the general population, which is almost 5 times the rate of poverty. So
let's add that
Yeah.
as a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
Would you mind, like, after the meeting, kind of making that edit?
yeah, absolutely.
So I amend my motion to pass this with that amendment.
Sure.
Okay, all in favor?
Right.
Then one more thing, we've been doing this for years, and could we possibly agree to have our flag flown at half mast on the 20th as a gesture of this?
Which flag?
Our American flag.
Oh,
We could also fly our pride flag. We could.
that's what I thought you were talking about.
I mean, we can make that decision.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know the rule. I mean,
Yeah.
flag rules are super particular. I'm not sure.
Local boards can decide.
Okay.
Yeah, so if somebody,
I
yeah,
feel like that would be really powerful,
Yeah.
you know?
On your own municipal property, you can't mandate that everybody in the village do, you can do with your own.
So you're suggesting to fly
on,
half staff on
Remembrance,
this Remembrance Day, like tomorrow?
like, come on, yeah. And in the future,
Yes,
yeah, as sort of a policy we have as other types of policies.
I like that a lot. I think that would be a good way to call attention. You know, I hope the community like reads this resolution because this year I just, when kind of researching everyone, I just couldn't distill sentences. So instead I provided a link to a bio of every
Yeah, no,
individual.
it's terrific, no, that's great.
And so, you know, when people see the flag at half mast, I hope they could, you know, look into
okay,
it.
so
Yeah.
that's Bill's motion,
I'll second that.
and Alex already seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
So have to contact our public works.
Yeah,
Ask them.
I can do that.
Great, okay,
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, take care.
thanks, Bill.
Yep.
And thanks again, Alex. Next item on the business agenda, I move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mike, do you want to provide us with the zoning code revision update?
Yeah, how much do you guys want to do that? Do you want to pick up where we left off, or do you?
Let's do a few minutes.
Okay, let me bring the computer up. I want to start out with definition of family. Emily, I did a ton of research of all the court cases out there that I could find. But I had come up with a definition. Let me share here. And Emily and I spoke at length last week and made some changes. So the blue that's crossed out is your current code, which is one person or two or more away by blood. It's kind of the old fashioned code, but you've added in the event of a conflict. So I sort of took all the court decisions and looked at what the sort of predominant theme was, and most of the court decisions are based on traditional family versus what they were calling a functional equivalent family. And I originally started out with that, which is in the purple part that's crossed out. But then when Emily and I talked, we realized the bill, you know, the clear policy of this board has been, we don't want to get involved in who's renting or who's living there. But what is the real question is duration. So because of our short-term rental law section, we already have a definition of the word transient, which is 29 days or less. Your sort of traditional old style rooming houses and things were usually based on short-term stays, not somebody staying there 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. So Emily and I took another look at it, and this is the result of the new definition. So with the purple that's added in. So one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit living together in a non-transient manner, meaning they're living there greater than 29 days, functioning as a single housekeeping unit, not be limited by the number of occupants, provided the dwelling unit meets applicable building and property maintenance codes. Building code has occupancy standards for bedrooms and has standards for bedroom size and has ingress and egress, meaning every bedroom has to have two in and out ability. You know, you have to have a door and a window in case of emergency or fire. So instead of us trying to determine what's a bedroom, what's not a bedroom, let's let the building code, which already does that, let's let that prevail. So then building off that, the occupants do not create a transient lodging use, meaning they're not staying for 30 days or less. It's further intended to include unmarried partners, same sex, so these are the the functional equivalent families that the courts have talked about. Which are not related by blood or marriage, but are related in other ways. Which could be for students sharing a house together. It's the same thing as if they were for family members sharing a house together. There should be no difference. The key is functioning as a single housekeeping unit. What that means is really that, there's not 4 bedrooms and 4 kitchens. They're sharing kitchens, they're potentially, I'm sorry, this timed out on me.
Yeah, there's not 4 bedrooms, 4 kitchens and 4 meters
Right.
for Central Hudson.
Right.
Yeah.
And then nothing shall be interpreted to limit the rights protected, the Fair Housing Act, the New York State Human Rights Law, or any other applicable housing laws. We're not redefining it above and beyond them, and I had it further where I went further to say a traditional family is this, a functional equivalent is this, and Emily's opinion was, let's get away from all that.
Yeah,
Let's just deal with duration. If you're staying 30 days or less, you are transient and you fall under different categories. We've also, by crossing out rooming house and boarding house, we have removed those definitions from our code. I don't know that we have any currently approved. In my mind, it's an outdated, there's really no difference from a rooming house than a motel, except in a rooming house, according to the state, it has a resident living there. It's no different than a bed and breakfast, which is covered under residential code and requires the owner to live on premises by state law. So I want you guys to think about this a little bit. Give me feedback on what you think, but I think we may have nailed it. And I will tell you this, the whole definition of family is a, 30-year conundrum in New York State of how do we do this. So,
Right.
but I wanted to backtrack a little bit to that. We left off talking about signs, and if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of move back forward. I'm gonna backtrack though to get to where we and I wanted to, there's a couple things in signs that I need to get some feedback from how you guys would like to handle it. I've totally rewritten, there will now be its own section on signs. It didn't exist before. This is modeled quite a bit over the way the city of Kingston did theirs, which is templates with pictures to show you this type of sign looks like this. We start out with the purposes of why we regulate signs. I added in a few that we didn't really, in my opinion, go enough into detail. Prevent dangers to public safety, historic and architectural heritage of the village. We care very much about that. We had the design review board. Effective and functional use of signs as directional, informational, and advertising. You don't want an overabundance of signs. You want just enough to serve those purposes. All the rest of the pieces that were already there made a lot of sense. Authorities, this is key. There was a Supreme Court decision. It feels like it was recent, but it was probably more about 10 years ago. The number 2, a community or a local board cannot rule on content of signs. You can say, size, color, type, location, duration. Content is covered under First Amendment rights. Now a commercial business might be slightly different, I don't know, but if somebody puts a sign up on their front yard, you cannot force them to take it down unless it doesn't meet your zoning code. Just because you don't like what it says. And and there are sections that are exempt that we're saying that they can be installed, but that the building inspector should be consulted. We go into general definitions. Many of these definitions, the black ones, were in your definition section of your current code. I put them all in the sign section of the code. To me, it's easier to navigate. I got a lot more into all the different types of signs, including adding pictures. So, you know, if anybody, they're just I randomly went around and shot some pictures and was like, okay, this is an address sign, this is that kind of sign. So banners, I will admit, these are a pet peeve of me personally. I'm proposing that they be banned. I don't think they add anything. I think they're really distracting. If you guys think differently, we can certainly change that. But currently you don't allow the banner type signs in the code, in place of a permanent sign. Yes, there are some out there. Yes, some of them have been contacted and told they have to change it. There's others that we're working with, who are in process of trying to work toward changing it. That's more the ones on the left. The ones on the right are the ones that I find particularly somewhat offensive because they're always out by the road. They usually are blocking sight lines and
Do they, so do people regularly say, well, they're just temporary, those vertical signs?
Yeah, well, some people do, and some people make them be, they say they're temporary and they never are.
I know.
It's your call. I find them very, distracting, very, cluttersome. You don't have to decide yes or no right now. Just while I was going through the definitions, I was gonna point that out. There's a section of signs that are not permitted, that we will get to, where you can tell me what you want and what you don't want. You know, the changeable letter signs are another one. If they're made into a permanent sign, that's one thing. If they're on wheels and can be just towed away and removed. I personally, I think they, you know, sort of cheapen the look of the community. So these are all just definitions and, oops, I'll have to work on a little bit on formatting there because it did some weird things on me, but, so I won't go through all these definitions. Oh, and this is another one. There's inflated display signs. Yeah, they're fun, but they really are bad for motorists because people driving down the road get really distracted by them.
That means they're good economic development.
So like I said, can be your guys' call.
I don't know where to shop unless I see one of those.
There were a couple of people dressed like that on Halloween. Very distracting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm gonna have to do some new formatting because as we've added things, some things moved around on me. So, so then these are the prohibited signs, billboards. The billboards, bench signs, and roof signs are from your current code. The ones in black are from your current code. I've added. Somebody wants to come into the meeting. I've added the digital or electronic messaging signs. Most communities are, unless you have a real big business district, most communities are moving away from those, for several reasons. One is the rate of refresh it causes this flicker effect and it's very distracting. People get the scrolling ones, people get caught up trying to read them, forgetting that they're driving down the road. So again, this is one that's
Sponsored by like a big business too. That was like a thing.
Yeah. I don't think there are any in New Paltz right now, so I think banning them and just saying they're not allowed. You're not changing anything that already has happened. Sandwich boards, currently, you guys in the books don't allow them. We do know they're all over. What I'm sort of proposing is a little bit of a twist on that, saying as long as they're not placed on a sidewalk or blocking pedestrian, bicycle, or vehicle access. You know, say for example, a business is set back and has front yard. I used to think the Little Oak Bakery, they have a
Yeah.
sandwich board sign, but it's in their yard.
Mhm.
So my point is, do we care if it's in their yard?
No, right.
It's, if it's not impeding,
Right, it's on the sidewalk.
Yeah. so my change here is to say that they make, you know, you can have them, but they can't be on the sidewalk and blocking the sidewalk. Cause we certainly know we have enough sidewalk issues. The streamers and pennants, those are the type of things you see oftentimes at a grand opening or car dealerships, those metallic banners. Again, another pet peeve. In this sign, you'll see a fair amount of Mike Beatty's inflection. You guys can tell me if you agree or not agree.
Yeah, I have to go back through and reread all the
Um,
sign stuff now.
The inflated display signs, that's the waving ones, or even, you know, there's examples of like a giant tire that's an inflatable tire.
Mhm.
It's not moving, but do you really want that type of look in your, you know, it's up to you guys what you want the community to look like.
You know, it's interesting, there was like a brief moment, I guess, when like it seemed like other environmental endeavors were like going like swimmingly on the state level, where NYPIRG folks, like we're all like brainstorming, like tackling the unenvironmentally friendly sign issues across the state, but then there's other bigger fights to keep fighting now. Yeah, but this is making me think of that.
Yeah, and this is where, and you know, I'm not looking for answers now, but I'm asking for you guys, you know, a little bit of a homework assignment. Try to take a look through this section and give me some feedback on what you think or don't think. And I'm also asking the planning board as well.
Thank you.
The application and fee process for a sign permit is pretty much gonna remain the same, the issuance of the permit. Here's the ones that are exempt. So memorial plaques, historical markers, things like that, they're exempt. Signs not visible from outside the lot if they're situated, you know, if there's a sign that's way, you know, it's. And that's one that I carried over from other codes. In a more smaller community like this and not a real rural community, maybe we don't need that one. But nameplates on, you know, 1 square foot on a site, no issue. Identification signs with doorbells, mailboxes. I know it may sound a little silly, but those are a sign. You can't have one more an address, you can only have one on a property. And we actually, in the code, if you have a sign out by the road, require that your address be on that sign in some manner. There's very ways it's been achieved. Cautionary, directional, regulatory warning, you know, posted signs, things like that, no trespassing, as long as they're a certain size. You don't have a lot of agricultural properties in the village, but agriculture has gotten, through ag and markets, has gotten a lot of leeway and a lot of flexibility in promoting agriculture. So basically, if there's any associated with an agribusiness on the property, and it has an ag exemption, we're gonna let them do what they need to do. Awning, canopy, or marquee signs, but you don't want them to be bigger than 4 square feet. And then these are other ones that I added in that I found in another code. Yeah, I don't know that we have any bus shelters, but maybe some, do we? Okay, maybe someday we'll have more, so no more than 2 per shelter. Civic and religious signs are fairly much exempted, directional and instructional signs, incidental signs, non-commercial flags, emblems, or insignia, that's American flags or other types of, insignia or flags that would go with it. Holiday decorations, and I did remove the section that we talked about that
Yeah.
one time, saying it had to be taken down after a certain time. Construction signs, those are those ones that you see when somebody's doing work on a property and they stick one of those, like, looks like a political sign, you know, with, you know, work being done here, advertising their business. All well and good, but we wanna, it can't be closer than 5 feet to the street or property line, and it can't be greater than 8 square feet. So, which is like 2 by 4. Real estate signs, this was all from a standard code that about how real estate signs should be handled. Signs less than 32 square feet. And if they're not commercial, if they're on a residential property. So this is where we're covering that. You can put a sign in your front yard if you want, as long as you meet these standards. 32 square feet, that's a sheet of plywood. That's pretty big. But
That's a big sign.
yeah, you guys can decide if you want to make that smaller.
I think that's good.
But, sandwich boards no greater than 10 square feet where they're allowed by code. And then we talk about what are temporary signs. Of note to you, some codes regulate political signs differently from other temporary signs. It's not legal.
Yeah, it's so
You have to
unconstitutional.
consider all temporary signs the same way. So we basically have set up, it has to be removed within 1 week after such event. And if it's not removed, the building inspector can provide a written notice to the owner requiring it be removed. And if it's not, then, it calls for removal of the sign in accordance with 21230, which is the section of code here. So basically, you get after the event's happened, if we issue a notice, you got a week to comply. If you don't comply, we can take action.
You gotta grab your signs, Bill.
You do have to sign up some stewards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Got in the Shivertown on 32.
Shivertown?
Yeah,
Well,
I couldn't get it.
general regulations here, the owner of a property has to consent. You can't just put a sign up on their property. Now, that doesn't mean you can't put it up along the roadways if that's public right of way, but you can't put a sign up on somebody's property without them consenting. It can't obstruct vision. These are standard, your sign can't have these words, stop, look, danger. It adds, and it also can't look like a traffic light. That's standard. We set a setback. I tried to set back at least 5 feet from the front and side lot lines, although we were just talking about signs today. And the way it's set up right now is it has to be 10 feet from the curb or 5 feet from the inner sidewalk edge, whichever is greater. So I may go back and just pull that because that seems to be working. I said a little, 5 feet from the front and side lot lines, but the lot line may go all the way to the curb. And if there's a sidewalk that's 2 or 3 feet and then somebody puts a sign up, that sign could potentially be blocking somebody pulling out of a driveway. So I think I'm gonna have to rethink that a little bit. No sign shall exceed a height equal to 1/2 its distance from the road right of way. So, whatever your height is, it can't half the distance from the, this is a change. They can be double faced. We calculate the square feet right now. Each side of the sign is counted separately. Makes no sense to me. You're gonna have a front and a back of most signs already. Why are we calculating as square footage based on ability to put letters on? The square or the rectangle of the sign is the impact. So that is a major change from the way we do it now. Um, um, illumination, can't be internally illuminated. They can, a steady stationary shielded light source directed downward and solely at the sign. So what this is saying is basically the light has to be above and down. You will see some people want to put the light on the ground and shine up. Very rarely does it hit just the sign. It usually spills off to the sides and then, so I prefer above and lighting down. Then the light dies into the ground.
Yeah, I think that's like the dark sky standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can only use white lights, except in the case of a neon sign. That's your current code. I put a section of design guidelines in here. I won't go through them all now. Then we have regulations by zoning districts. So in your residential districts, you have one sort of set of regulations for signs. In your commercial and mixed use, you have others. That's fairly standard. We did add a section, and I will give great deference to the ice cream cone at the, on North Chestnut. It's called an iconic sign is the technical definition of those kind of signs. Your code didn't mention them. This is gonna allow them to be permitted, but, it still has to meet the applicable regulations for size and location. It could be things like barber poles, that's a sign. You know, if it's an eyeglass place, maybe they got a giant pair of eyeglasses kind of thing. And then there are some exceptions for corner lots for sign location. These are temporary commercial signs. We pretty much kept them, except it used to say permitted for a period not exceeding 2 weeks prior to the activity. I've changed it to 60 days. I felt like 2 weeks was too short. 60 days maybe is too long. Maybe we should go to 30 or something, but I sort of felt like 2 weeks ahead advertising an event. You guys can tell me if you want to go back to that. Now, in this proposal,
Yeah, I feel like we haven't been following that,
We
like, as a
haven't.
community,
we
yeah.
have,
Like, that's so silly,
Yeah.
why would that, yeah.
yeah. I admit my number 60 is somewhat arbitrary as well.
But that just seems to be
Yeah.
something like we could follow, yeah.
Planning board review of signs. Right now, if a planning board is reviewing a site plan application that involves signs, they're reviewing it. Otherwise, they're not. I'm changing it so there's specific types of signs that will go automatically to the planning board for a sign review. Whether they're changing a site plan or not, it'll be a sign review by the planning board. And then other types will be reviewed by the building inspector. So it would be, well, right now, mural shopping and office center building, have to go through the planning board. But I'm basically saying all freestanding signs should go to the planning board for a review. It can be relatively quick, but I just think the planning board is the appropriate board to review these larger signs. Even any off-premises sign. So if somebody is advertising a business somewhere else, but putting their sign on somebody else's property, I think that should be reviewed. So there's gonna be a process of how that all works. And anything that's part of a, like I said, part of a site plan or special use would be, and they have to be acted on within 45 days of receipt of the application. That's about, right now, it's about a month with the building department from the time we receive the initial application to an approval of a sign. So with the planning board, it's a little bit longer. Non-conforming signs, abandoned signs, and violations, how they're dealt with, we kept that all the same. Now here's we get into the examples. So This is, these are non-freestanding signs, so you have awning signs, and, you know, I went online and found examples, so I took pictures locally. And then we sort of describe what it is. We talk about the lettering on, awning signs usually have lettering. We show you what districts they're allowed in. In this case, it's basically the business and mixed use districts. We set the size and limitation, and we say you can have one per storefront. So, you know, I find that this chart is a better way to do it. And basically, there's a page per sign type. Canopy signs, very similar to the awning signs. Window signs. And all these are signs that the building inspector will be able to review and approve. Marquee signs, I don't know that we have any in New Paltz currently. The Rosendale Theater was the first one that popped into my mind. Then we have hanging signs. We have a lot of those along Main Street. Projecting signs. Similar to a hanging sign, except it's attached to the building. It's a little picture. Yeah, yeah. Iconic sign, so there's your barber pole sign. This is a small iconic sign. Then you have wall signs, you know, the businesses. Now we get into freestanding signs, so any freestanding sign, we would want the planning board to have sign permit review. So this is that changeable letter sign that I was talking about, but it's mounted, it's framed, it's not sitting there on wheels and being pulled away. And I put some examples of the portable ones below, saying those types are not allowed.
But like the one that my market has, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. We don't care that it's a changeable letter, but we don't want it to look like it's gonna you know, it's gonna fall down or disappear at any moment.
What if it's just temporary?
Well, we're saying you can't use this style of sign for temporary.
I think I would be actually okay with,
I think those
This
are
is
actually cool. They're very.
temporary.
Okay, it's up to you guys. You
Yeah.
know, many communities are going to this because they don't like the look of them in their community. Because they tend not to become temporary. They
The one
tend
on
to
the
stay
left
there.
looks like a robot.
yeah.
Yeah. The one on the left is on Route 32 headed
Yeah,
north.
no, I reckon it's the red house.
Yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah, yeah, I tried to find generic places so people wouldn't go, oh, and like, so. But,
I think that they're part of like the temporary definition.
Okay.
I would be okay with that.
They're very Americana too.
okay, we
I mean,
can,
because if someone has that, like in their garage to use for an event or something, rather than like going and getting
so
like,
instead of saying
signs
it's
that are-
not permitted, we could say that that could be a temporary sign.
yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, but then a temporary doesn't need a planning board review.
Yeah,
It's only if it was gonna, but I think you should still say that it can't be a permanent sign.
yeah, I don't think that should
Okay,
be
yeah.
permanent,
Okay.
but to be honest, like, I'm okay with most things if
Okay.
they're temporary. Cause like I'm thinking from like in the environmental perspective too, you know,
Mhm.
like just. If it's temporary, like I'd rather people use what they have, you
Okay,
know,
I'll make those tweaks.
like upcycle,
Yep.
old weird nostalgic signs, go for it
Yeah.
temporarily.
So the ground or monument sign, I mean, I've seen a lot of these in the town and some in the village, you know, it's a very attractive, very useful kind of sign. Post and panel signs, these traditionally are not real tall, but these are, you know, lower signs. Not to exceed 10 feet in height. Then we have pole signs. Taller, I've set a limit on it at 14. You guys can tell me if you think it should go taller. I think, you know, you don't want a lot of, the taller a sign is along a roadway, the faster people drive. And that is actually a proven fact. It just lends itself to a more of a thoroughfare, like a shopping mall area kind of thing, than if they're forced to be lower. Um,
How much more we have this evening?
why don't I finish the signs and we'll call it a night, I'm almost done. Commercial directory, the best example I could find was the Tops Market here in town, so, and then the static alphanumeric display sign, your traditional gas station signs. And
I love knowing
I sneak this one in all the time because we were kind of proud of it in Rochester. This is one of the large iconic signs that happened to be at the time the world record garden gnome in the in the world.
And now it's like only the
Now it's like
second.
third, I think.
Oh my goodness.
We've been bypassed. But, you know, if somebody wants to do this, you do have to consider it a sign. It's not, I know people say, well, it's a statue. It's still a sign. So it should go through some sort of review process. And that's where we leave off. So why don't we pick up next time I meet with you guys on parking? And I'll make these tweaks that we've talked about, and I'm continuing to meet with the planning board and make tweaks and.
Okay, so while you're here, any ZBA update?
The ZBA had one application that was approved for, less than 144 square foot shed, but in the front yard.
All right.
That was approved on Plains Road. The neighbors had similar already. We have received an appeal of a building permit issuance. That will be taken up in December.
Prospect Street.
7 Prospect Street.
Okay.
Another appeal for the same one that was appealed the first time, but for the new building permit. Planning board, I emailed you, so I can,
Well, Floyd's lots 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Were approved in the.
Yeah, the 2
yoga
lots.
Studio.
Yeah.
And Wells Fargo, that's moving ahead.
They're moving ahead for decision next meeting.
Right.
So the two of the 4 lots, on the 4 lot subdivision at Prospect and Henry W the 2 on Henry W were approved. They're gonna have a shared driveway between the 2 though, so there's only 1 driveway crossing the bike path.
That's good.
Yeah.
What's with the other 2?
Only 1 other lot is gonna have a house built on it right now. The people that are buying lot 4 also wanna buy lot 3 and leave it vacant at the moment. With the thought that they may build a house later for relatives, for elderly relatives, but for the moment, they're gonna leave lot 3 vacant. So lot 4 was 1 meeting behind the other 2. So it had its public hearing, it got its, authorization to write a resolution of approval at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then the yoga studio, which was asked for in the cellar of the Wells Fargo building to be tied to the gym, has approval, at the next meeting. And, the decision was, approved to be written.
And the gym is open.
And the gym is open. And I think the credit union is close behind, but I don't wanna say.
And then the developer's working on the pervious surface across the street. That's the offset where they added new blacktop on the back
Yeah,
side.
there were 8 spaces across the street that were turned from parking to green space to replace the green space that was lost.
8 or 6?
It's 6 in front, and then there's 2 in the middle that are gonna be like planter areas to do like a breakup.
Because pervious surface is good for our infiltration issues and global warming, and we don't want to blacktop everything.
Yep. And can I just share too, Woodland Pond at 5 o'clock on Monday night is doing a community, presentation on how they've dealt with environmental aspects of their property. they will be coming to the planning board in January to start a new review for the new properties that they purchased that they want to expand operations. But they wanted to get have a community, the sort of informational.
That's on the 24th.
It's this coming Monday at 5 PM at Woodland Pond. I can't tell you what room or anything like that, but
They send us an email about that?
they sent one to me and I don't remember if I shared it with you guys, but I will share it.
Very familiar.
Yeah, I will share it with you if I didn't. I'll make sure to share it tomorrow. But it's not about any particular project. It's just in general how they've addressed the environmental issues and challenges of that region and area. There's a lot of wetlands in that area. So, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, anything else or else, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, do you want to make a public comment or just come to the table?
I missed it before. On behalf of the
Just say your,
John Roth, on behalf of the Impulse Democrats, I wanted to present a poster to you that I created on election
oh, okay,
night.
thank you.
You could put it in your office or whatever.
Appreciate
I just
that.
wanted you to have it.
Thank you.
We're very happy that you're here. We think you are the right guy.
Thank you. Anything else or? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.